Thank you very much for joining me. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields, and thank you for being part of this weather community. All eyes, of course, on Milton. This is going to become a powerful hurricane, as really all hurricanes are in one way or another. I want to show you what could happen over toward the Yucatan and Mexico, kind of what's going on first, and watching western Cuba, where most of the heaviest weather should stay to the north. So I want to get into what we could expect near Merida, over toward Cancun, and then start to look down the road. Now, this could be the first direct hit right into the Tampa area in over 100 years. A very high concern, but the landfall eventually down the road could be anywhere from near Tampa all the way south through Fort Myers. That still needs to be fine-tuned. So with that, do this channel for safety. So if you're in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area, all the way down through, say, Fort Myers, if you have any alerts to evacuate, or if the local officials ask you to evacuate, please do so. Then as we work inland, I am concerned with some flooding and high winds, of course, through Central Florida. If you're watching in Central Florida right now, WFTV.com, a great resource for live streaming, for preparations, and county by county, exactly what you could expect. Again, WFTV.com, they'll be live streaming through the entire system as it works in to give you the very specifics on what you could expect where you are. And then down the road, I'm a little more optimistic for the Bahamas and watching Bermuda, so I want to expand things out. Still a big concern for us in the northern Bahamas. I'm monitoring Freeport over toward New Providence for some eventual, or at least the potential of some tropical storm impact. So I'm going to take you out in time, nice and slowly here. I do apologize, this video is going to be a little bit long. But now for today, it is a tropical storm, and it ramped up quickly yesterday. But this forecast that I showed you yesterday is generally on track, and that's my goal, not to have any big changes with the forecast, to give you a heads up so you can prepare. I made some minor tweaks in this, but really nothing big from yesterday, which is good. Winds at 75 miles per hour tomorrow. So it will be a hurricane tomorrow. It will be Hurricane Milton. Then it is going to strengthen more so on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, that eventual landfall. Now, it's also, not only do I not know exactly where it's going to come on shore yet, which makes sense because it's still kind of getting its act together, but also the timing's a little bit different. The timing this time of year is trickier because they're fronts to the north. So sometimes it could bring it in a little bit quicker. Sometimes things can slow up. We'll cover that, but winds could be near 100 miles per hour or up to about 115 with a landfall as of now near the St. Petersburg area, working right across Central Florida. So again, please stay tuned to WFTV, because with Hurricane Ian, for example, there were so many different spots that got flooding in Central Florida. There were a lot of flood emergencies, so I want you to have the very latest information on that. And then this swings off the Space Coast on Thursday, and it's going to transition into almost a subtropical system. It's going to get tied up into a front. On this heading, this would keep the worst weather north of the northern Bahamas, just to the north of the Yucatan, and significantly north of Cuba. In the Florida Keys, heaviest weather would be to the north. But if this were to work into, say, the Fort Myers area, of course, that would shift everything to the south. Here's the National Hurricane Center, in which they did issue tropical storm warnings, which makes good sense for the extreme northern portions of the Yucatan of Mexico. The hurricane conditions are going to stay to the north. So if you're in Merida, if you're in Cancun, the hurricane conditions will be to the north over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and then substantially to the north of western Cuba, which is very good news, of course, for western Cuba. And again, all of this stays away for Jamaica, the Cayman Islands. This stays away back through Puerto Rico. All of this is going to be running right up here. So let me go model by model for you. The American model, same thing, brings us in near the Tampa area with a landfall in the afternoon on Wednesday. So a lot of the action is going to be through the day on Wednesday. Winds around 115 miles per hour at landfall. And then it becomes a tropical storm offshore as it transitions, kind of gets tied up into a front and becomes a little more subtropical. Now, the European model is very close to the same. Winds at landfall point later in the day on Wednesday would be near 100 miles per hour, very close to Tampa, south, maybe Anna Maria Island, Clearwater, could be even a touch south of there, watching over toward Bradenton as this moves onshore, and then working across once again. So that's a European model, very similar to the American model. Now, the Canadian model is different. It's more south and slower. This would have a landfall late in the day Thursday, and that's why I do mention some of the discrepancies. So it's kind of a wait and see on a few things, just fine-tuning a few things overall. You're making the preps for tropical storm and hurricane conditions throughout much of the peninsula of Florida. 90-mile-per-hour winds on the Canadian model at landfall, and this would be a landfall a little bit closer to the Fort Myers area, the potential of that. And then swinging back here, the Icon model shows a hurricane Wednesday morning. This one's a little earlier. Now, I'm leaning to both the American and European model, so I don't like to just show you everything and leave you hanging on kind of what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. I do think this comes in very close to the St. Petersburg area, winds roughly around 100 miles per hour or more, and we'll dive into the intensity in just a moment, but I do want to show you kind of everything that is out there so you have all the information you need. Now, the computer models have been very consistent with this, all these squiggly lines, just like a computer or device you may have at home or at work. They're different. Some are higher powered, some are better in different situations, so that's why kind of behind the scenes I try to take all these squiggly lines, kind of narrow it down for you. Now, out in time, it does show strengthening. Now, this time of year, I mentioned the timing's a little tricky with the fronts because you get those fall fronts moving in. So is the intensity because if the fronts could kind of play a factor in this. I'll just leave it at that. But this is a day out. This is 2 days out. So 2 days out, let's go up in time, these computer models. Most of them have this in the category 2 range here, that orange shading there. Some stronger, some a little weaker, and the models range from anywhere from a category 1 to a category 5. Let's go somewhere in between at this point as far as intensity goes. So roughly around a category 2, maybe a category 3 at landfall time. Now here's the American model, and then I'll show you the European model, and I want to show you the wind field too. So here's Mexico. First thing is first, watching over toward Merida. Heaviest weather stays to the north. That is very, very good news. We need these things to stay over water. I do not like storms. That's actually why I do weather. I want these things to stay away from folks. A surge of moisture out ahead of it. That's bad news. Like what happened with Helene up here, up into the Carolinas. They had rain before the system even moved in. That's going to be the same thing for Florida. There's rain before this even moves in. And that's why I mentioned those resources at the beginning with a probability, high probability of flooding right across parts of Florida. But there's the core of it. So this is tomorrow afternoon. Becoming a hurricane. It will be a hurricane. Hurricane conditions, the core stays north of Mexico, but once again, there's that surge of moisture out ahead of it, which is just awful because you could get a few inches of rain before this even works in. And then going out in time here, this is by Tuesday afternoon. All the preps in Florida should be done by later in the day on Tuesday. You want to get everything done over the next few days. Here's Mexico, here's Cuba. And you see Cuba, this is going to stay well to the north. If you have friends, family in Cuba, you're letting them know about this. Again, the heaviest weather all stays to the north of Cuba. Watching the Keys for the Florida Keys just depends on if it's going to be that southern track or a little bit more of that northern track. But here the American model has this becoming a very strong hurricane, as really all hurricanes are. That's why they're called hurricanes, Brian. But nonetheless, this would make landfall sometime either or sometime during the day on Wednesday. The timing, again, can change by 4 or 5 hours. Could come in a little bit in the morning or maybe more so in the afternoon. This brings it onshore right up through Tampa Bay, which would be the first time in over 100 years of a direct hit in the Tampa area. Now, where it comes onshore and south, that's where there'll be a huge push of water. To the north, the water's actually going to be coming out, so it's going to be very critical where this makes landfall. Keeping an eye on the northern Bahamas. Got you covered in the Bahamas. If anything gets different with this, I'm going to zoom down island by island for you, and then this works across. So by the time we get into Thursday, the American model already has a spin offshore. You kind of look at the map and it almost doesn't look like anything crazy at this point. It's going to be a broad spin. I'll show you that with the winds here in a second. It's going to transition into a subtropical, so not truly tropical system down the road once it gets tied up into the front. Let me show you that to you here. Here are the winds, and to keep everyone covered, kilometers an hour and miles per hour on the map. So here's Mexico, and you see it winding up, and the reds and some of the yellows starting to pop up as it gets stronger. This here is by tomorrow. Will be a hurricane at that point. Winds are going to be right around 75 to 80 miles per hour. So we're looking at some very strong winds just off the coast of Mexico, but clipping by the Yucatan with some tropical storm conditions. Could have some gusts around 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers an hour. But nothing the folks here can't handle. And then north of Cuba. But this here is by the time we get into Wednesday, stopping it here. You see Wednesday morning right here. And that's where it could become a major hurricane, even if it's not. It's going to be a powerful hurricane, obviously, as this moves in. Winds, so you can see some of the yellow showing up there, 90 or higher. Could be 110 to about 115 with that landfall as we work our way right into Wednesday late morning into the afternoon, working across, and then it works across with strong tropical storm and hurricane winds right across parts of central Florida, potentially even North Florida, and then it starts to work offshore by Thursday morning, and you see it there in kind of a broader spin. Once it moves offshore, the wind field is actually going to expand. It's a really compact system now, but once it moves offshore Florida near the Bahamas, the wind field expands, which means northern Bahamas. What I'm seeing now, Freeport, New Providence, we're looking at some tropical storm winds as we work our way in through the day on Thursday. I'm not seeing this as a Dorian situation, which is always in the back, really in the front of our minds, right? I'm not seeing that. This will start to just be a big wind maker offshore with those higher seas on Thursday and then move away. Now, if the Canadian model is onto something, all of this timing would be a little bit slower, but overall, the impacts and kind of what I'm seeing overall generally stays the same. Here's the European model. So you get over to the coast of Mexico here. Here's Cuba. Florida here, watching the Bahamas here. Keep an eye on Bermuda. I'm not seeing this as a threat long term. There's that surge of moisture out ahead of it. Now, obviously, the west coast of Florida was so impacted by Helene. There's piles of debris just devastating on the west coast. So again, this is going to be back-to-back systems moving in. But our friends Georgia to the north through the Carolinas, which were also devastated by Helene, this stays to the south, but hitting some of the exact same areas that got so much flooding with Helene in the west coast of Florida. So here it is, becoming that hurricane tomorrow. This is the European model. Look how in line it is with the American model. So that would keep the heaviest weather to the north of Merida here, and then here's Cuba, and then working its way over here. This would be a strong hurricane, Category 1, Category 2. By the time we get into Tuesday, heaviest weather just to the north, stays to the north of Cuba. Here are the Florida Keys right in here, right? You got Jamaica here, Cayman Islands here, northern Bahamas, and right through Florida here. And then this is going to work its way from Tuesday into Wednesday, strengthening some before it makes landfall into the Tampa area. But this is not just a Tampa scenario. Obviously, look how big it is, impacting the entire peninsula of Florida. The entire peninsula will either have tropical storm or hurricane conditions. There's kind of no escaping that, right? The angle it's taking is a little bit different. It's coming right in. It's not making a little curve, so even some wobbles aren't going to make a big difference overall. They'll make a big difference with the surge, which will break down further over the next couple days. And then the European model has it offshore north of the Bahamas, the center, on Thursday. But I mentioned that wind field is really going to expand. There'll be gusty winds on Thursday all the way from the Outer Banks of North Carolina down through the Bahamas, just because it's going to be a broad wind field. And then you see it here. Most of the models just kind of have something fizzling, getting caught up into a front. Here we are in Bermuda right in here. So not seeing this long term as a threat for Bermuda, trying to think of everyone down the road. Now the wind shear is so very tricky. I was really hoping that this would play more of a factor. Still may, because there's still uncertainty with this time of year. Wind shear, those winds up above that could just kind of rip apart these systems, which we like. Most of the wind shear will be up here, but eventually as this moves into Florida, it will get tied into that wind shear and that front. That's why we'll see it go from a hurricane back into more of a subtropical system once it moves offshore. So just watching this, I wish the wind shear was a little bit more south at this point, which it's not. Water temperatures, of course, very warm. They did go down some when Helene moved over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, but they have rebounded slightly, looking at about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Could be a little bit warmer in a few spots here, 30 degrees Celsius, so water temperatures are warm. But one thing is, this is a small system, right? Initially, it's going to expand. But if that pocket of if the core of this rolls over that, I know this map's a little bit hard to see, but it's a wonderful product that's put out. See that red right there? If the core of this were to run right over that, that's not only warm water, but it's warm deep water. So as it churns up the water, it just churns up more water. This is heat content. There are these hot pockets in the water. We saw that with Beryl. We saw that with Helene as Helene developed in the Western Caribbean. But if it rolls over that could really intensify it. So it's going to be a close call as far as the intensity goes. And as of now, we're looking at anywhere from a Category 2 to Category 3. So winds could be near 100 or plus as this makes landfall. But it's going to be that surge too. Where it comes on shore, the center of it the center and just to the south, there's going to be a big push of water. That's why I mentioned, please listen to the local officials. Don't mess around with this one because the angle it's taking, if they ask you to leave, leave, period. And think of yourself, I know it's hard to say, but almost grateful if you do have the means to leave, because a lot of folks do not have the means to leave and make other accommodations. So we're thinking of you, though, dealing with this back to back, no doubt, with this over toward the west coast of Florida. But there are the higher seas, and all of this will be working in. As far as the surge goes, it's going to be upwards of 12, maybe plus feet. But as far as where that's going to be, still to be determined, just because does it move into the Tampa area, is a little bit more to the south over toward Fort Myers. But as we work our way into Friday, of course, the Atlantic waters are going to stay extremely dangerous with the elevated seas. So we are rolling down the list of names. And actually, over the last few weeks, it's been one of the most active periods in the hurricane season for the last few weeks on record. For late September, early October, this is about as active as it's been. From Helene, Isaac was out there in the North Atlantic. Joyce was out there in the Atlantic. So was Kirk and Leslie, which I want to show you, and Milton now. So this has been about as active as it's been on record for late September and early October. There, you can see one hurricane here, one hurricane here. This is Kirk, huge wind maker. Kirk will be for the United Kingdom over toward France. They are going to have true tropical storm conditions moving in. There is Leslie, and then over here, of course, that is Milton. So let me just show you what's going on. Here's Bermuda. Here we are in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, by the way, Trinidad and Tobago, we're going to have some extra rain moving in. And we had some thunderstorms yesterday. Guyana over towards Suriname, not organized, but we're going to see some extra rain. I'll zoom down in a moment. But to show you, Leslie is going to miss us in the Caribbean. Here's some of the extra rain possible with that front near Bermuda, but not seeing this, staying as a hurricane, working its way over toward Bermuda there on Wednesday. That's what's left of Kirk, the tropical storm conditions moving into France and over toward up toward London. And then you see as we work, here's Leslie as we work our way into Friday, and it will eventually get caught up in the same front that is going to take Milton. It's also going to take Leslie and just kind of keep it out to sea at this point. So this is to give you kind of that long term as we get about a week ahead. You can see here the tropical storm conditions that will move, especially toward the southern UK, over toward France once we work our way into Wednesday. It's amazing how the weather is so tied together globally. Here we are, Antigua and Barbuda in Leslie. Here's Bermuda. Leslie will stay away. We'll eventually make that curve and then start to a weekend. So this is Milton right here. There's that rain I was talking about. Barbados South, better chance of some rain, but especially over toward Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, not an organized system, but there is going to be that flood potential. So giving you a heads up, Port of Spain, even northeastern Venezuela, we're going to see some extra rain around over the next couple days. In the Dominican Republic too, and back toward Puerto Rico, a little energy around that could give us some of those scattered storms. Here we are in Mexico. Belize, all of Milton stays well to the north. Same thing, Honduras. I mentioned the Cayman Islands, Jamaica. This is on Monday. There's some of that rain that could clip us by Barbados, St. Lucia, down through Grenada. And you see it here, still some scattered showers. So unsettled across the southeastern Caribbean, and that will lead to some pockets of flooding. This here is as we work our way into a Tuesday. As far as the rain goes, obviously, wherever Milton goes, that could be over a foot of rain in some spots or up to a foot of rain. That's a possibility, especially with the rain that's out ahead of it. I was mentioning that, the batches of rain out ahead of Milton. Heaviest rain north of Cuba, but we may see some spots across the extreme northern sections of the Yucatan getting about 4 inches of rain or 100 millimeters of rain, but we're looking at scattered showers elsewhere. But I mentioned the DR, where we could get a few spots over the next couple days, 3 to 4 inches of rain or over 100 millimeters of rain. Could see some scattered showers, Puerto Rico, down through Guadalupe and Dominica. Dominica to the south, that's where it's more unsettled. And you see, look at this white and even black shading. So the heads up, thank you for spreading the word Trinidad and Tobago. I know all eyes are on other things, which makes sense. With that said, I'm watching us because we're going to see a better chance of some flooding as we go through the week ahead with not a named system, just tropical moisture that will be moving in. Even Guyana, where we had thunderstorms, had a little rain yesterday too in Suriname. Still some pockets of higher totals in Central America, but I mentioned Mexico. Obviously, most of that staying to the north with Milton, and way too dry north of Mexico City back through Texas. So some scattered storms possible in Jamaica. No washout, but could see a few hit or miss showers and storms over the next few days, about a 50% chance, 30% chance today in the Cayman Islands, a 20% chance tomorrow. And then you see that rain chance going up in Trinidad and Tobago, where we're going to see the risk of some flooding as we get into the upcoming week. Rain chance stays kind of active tomorrow and Tuesday. Barbados, a 50% chance. And you see that 60% chance tomorrow in St. Lucia. So every now and then we could get the pockets of rain and even some thunderstorms, Grenada included. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you see by the time we get into Tuesday, the rain chance bumps up to a good 60% chance of some rain, a 40 to 50% chance in Martinique, and about a 30 to 40% chance in Dominica over the next 3 days. Rain chance holds at 30% the next couple days in Guadeloupe, 30 to 40% chance Antigua and Barbuda. Rain chance pretty small today. St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat may catch a shower or two as we get into the upcoming week. 30 to 40% chance Anguilla and St. Bart's, 30 to 40% chance St. Martin, Saba and Statia. And we'll look at some scattered thunderstorms back through Puerto Rico, a 50% chance mainly in the afternoon and evening. Could see a couple showers, U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Rain chance though in the Bahamas. All eyes of course on Milton. If it takes that southern track, say if it goes into South Florida, that would mean some higher impacts for us in the northern Bahamas. Thank you for spreading the word across the Bahamas. Watching out for the possibility in our northern islands of some tropical storm conditions once we work our way into about Thursday. Isolated shower storm, Turks and Caicos, 30% chance, Dominican Republic, but a little bit higher near Santo Domingo, and that's where we could get some of those downpours and a higher chance of rain. We are hot across Haiti with a passing shower, 20% chance in Belize, very hot. All of Milton staying up to the north. Aruba could see a passing shower. Aruba over toward Curacao, rain chance 20 to 30%, Bonaire included, and then the rain chance in Guyana, a little elevated today, about a 50% chance. We'll see some storminess around at times. Suriname too, kind of hit or miss showers. Cuba, worse weather with Milton stays to the north, well to the north, but still that chance of some scattered showers and storms the next few days. Costa Rica, Panama, we're looking at about a 60% chance, 40 to 50% chance in Nicaragua, and a 30 to 40% chance as we work our way into Honduras over the next few days. Guatemala and El Salvador, about a 40% chance, picks up to a 60% chance on Tuesday. Could get some scattered showers across Mexico City to the north. It will be dry. And of course, watching the Yucatan, heaviest weather just misses to the north, but still getting clipped by some tropical storm conditions. Northern Colombia, 40 to 50% chance, 40% chance the next few days in northern Venezuela. And keeping an eye on Bermuda as of now, the next few days, that rain chance stays on the low side. So major hurricane impacts as this system rolls through the Gulf and makes its way toward Florida, in which it could be the first direct hit into Tampa. I think it was 1921, so over 100 years. Watching Mexico and Cuba in the short term, in which I covered, that powerful hurricane will eventually make landfall in Florida, most likely Wednesday. We'll see if it gets delayed a little bit. Kirk and Leslie out there, watching the tropical rain in the southeastern Caribbean. This is a super active October. I hope it calms down very soon, but just so much to track over the last few days. So I'll do my best as we go throughout the day to get to the comments. But I mentioned if you go back at the beginning of the video to some of the resources that maybe you could use as we go through Milton, but I'll go through those comments as we go throughout the day. Wherever you are, be safe. If you're making those hurricane preparations, we are thinking of you, and have a good rest of your day.